Welcome to the presentation on emissions inventory updates. I am Carrie Schroeder, the emissions inventory manager, and I'm going to give some updates for reporting your 2020 inventory. Contact information, if you'd like to contact this section, we have an email box, aei@deq.ok.gov. And the main phone number for the Air Quality Division is 405-702-4100. You can ask for emissions inventory or any other section if you have a compliance question or permitting question. As I mentioned, I'm the manager, and here's my email. And then my staff, we've got Michelle Horn, Michael Ketchum, and Grant Loney. There are their emails. We have, since we're doing this workshop as a pre-recorded video, it's a little different than what we've done in the past. In the past, we've had an in-person workshop, or we had a live virtual workshop last year. But since this is a pre-recorded one, we still wanted to give room for questions and answers. And so we've created a form on the website where the training videos are, and you can type in your question with your contact information, and we will review that question. And if we think it's a good question that everybody will want to see, we'll post the question and the answer. We'll also reach out to you individually with the answer. And we'll, of course, take comments as well. Just a reminder that the air quality rules always apply no matter what training video you're watching or guidance that we put out. If you feel that it contradicts our rules, the rules are what apply, and feel free to reach out to us for clarification. In this presentation, I'm going to go over some review information, just emissions inventory basics. Then I'll touch on other air programs that people think about when they're also thinking about emissions inventory reporting. And lastly, what everybody really wants is the new SLEIS features and reporting updates for 2020 reporting. So review first. An emissions inventory is just a report of actual emissions of regulated pollutants during the previous calendar year. You're basically telling us what equipment you have on site, how long those processes ran, and you're calculating your actual emissions, not your potential to emit. Our rules state that the owner or operator of any facility that is a source of regulated air pollutants is required to file an inventory. So that would include facilities that have an individual permit, or if they're registered under a general permit. And then facilities that are registered under a permit by rule don't always have to report every year, but 2020 inventory year is a special one, and all of them need to report. The Air Quality Division Director has the ability to request special inventories. We do not have that. We don't have any special inventories going on right now. So our rules state that the only facilities that do not need to file an inventory are permit exempt and de minimis, as defined in our rules. So since PBRs need to report this year, and they maybe haven't reported in 3 or 6 years, I just want to mention a few things in regards to them. So one is that you should get into SLEIS early and check that you still own all of those PBR facilities. And if some of them, if you've sold some of them, then you need to submit the proper paperwork, which I'll go over in some subsequent slides. If some of them are closed, or you believe they now qualify as permit exempt or de minimis, then you can send in a request to terminate your permit and let us know the reasoning for that. That will go to the permitting section. And then if you want to retain the permit, but the facility did not operate for 2020, then you can change the facility status and equipment status to temporarily shut down. We bill 2 years in arrears for your operating fees. Those are based on your actual emissions that you're submitting in your inventory. So these 2020 inventories that you're going to be submitting by April 1st will be billed in 2022. They'll be billed next year. And this allows us time to perform quality control on the inventories, make sure that we're going to be billing them the correct amount. The Title V operating fee was set at $32.30 per ton in 2008, and it changes every year based on the annual consumer price index. So this year, July of 2021, the Title V fee is $40.38 per ton, and that will be based on your 2019 inventories. And then the minor source fee is set at $25.12 per ton. That does not change every year. We do not double bill on pollutants. Sometimes we get questions on this, so I just want to make sure everyone understands. Like, you would be submitting your total VOC, but we will strip out the hazardous air pollutants from that so that we can bill for the HAPs and then bill the rest of the VOC amount. Particulate matter is another one that there could be room to double bill because you're reporting PM10 and PM2.5, but we know PM2.5 is a subset, so we're only going to bill on PM10. And then a reminder for PBRs, even though they're not reporting every year, we do bill them every year, and we bill on the last reported inventories. So I did add a little update in the review section just because I'm already going over the operating fee information. There is an update on how we're billing Title V sources when we get in either amended inventories that we already billed on, or if inventories are reported late that we would have already billed on. And that update is that we will be assessing those at the change in emissions, the additional emission amounts at the current year Title V rate instead of the year that it would have been billed at. And I've got a couple examples here. So for example, if a Title V facility submitted an amendment to a 2017 inventory in January of 2021, then the increase in emissions will be billed at the 2021 Title V rate. And since we bill 2 years in arrears, the original invoice would have been paid in 2019 and based on the 2019 Title V rate. So instead of that 2019 rate, going back and finding out what that was and billing at that, we're going to be billing at the 2021 rate. And it's only the additional emissions that we're going to bill at that. And the reason for this is because this is how EPA does it, and we have continually rising operational costs. Another example is if a facility failed to submit their 2017 inventory on time and ended up submitting all of it, their whole inventory in March of 2021, then they would be billed at the 2021 rate for all of their emissions. But that would probably be rare for a Title V facility. And this update does not affect minor sources because that's a set fee and doesn't change every year. And this does not change our billing threshold, which is just our internal policy. We have that 5-ton company-wide threshold for billing. So if you sent in an amendment, it would have to reach that 5-ton threshold first for us to rebill on it. And you can go to our website to get this information as well. Here's what an invoice looks like, and we send it out July 1st. It's due 30 days later. It's very important that we have the correct responsible official information because that's who we send the invoice to. And if the RO at your facility or at your company has left and you need to change that, you can utilize Form 100-882. which looks like this. And now with SLEIS, we are able to have multiple ROs for a company or facility. And if you need to look at what you have in SLEIS currently, you can log in and look at the company users or facility users. The RO is given the submitter and administrator role automatically, and having the administrator role makes it so that you can remove other SLEIS users from your company. So if somebody has left the company and you don't want them to have access in SLEIS, the RO can go in and remove that. We would also ask, though, that you contact us so that we can deactivate that person's account so they can't log into SLEIS at all. And if we're talking about somebody that's not an RO, you can utilize our other user form, which is 100-733. So that is for anybody that works at the facility or is a consultant, and you can give them an editor role so they can fill out the inventory if that's what you'd like them to do. But only the RO can submit the inventory. If you have sold any of your facilities, I just want to remind you what our rules state on that. The seller needs to notify DEQ using our prescribed form no later than 30 days following the change in ownership. And the transferee is now subject to the new or is subject to the existing permit conditions and/or compliance schedules, which does include the annual operating fees, and that may be based on emissions reported in years of operation prior to the transfer of ownership. So to change ownership, you can submit form 100-883, and that looks like this. The previous owner and the previous owner fills out all of their information. The new owner fills out their information. Both parties need to sign it. And you can submit that to us. Here is the website where you can access all of our air quality forms. So all of those, the RO form, the other SLEIS user registration form, this change of ownership form. And this is very important that your facilities get changed over quickly because we will be sending out your invoice in July. You need to make sure that you own those facilities or that we get them transferred over prior to sending out the invoice. So just a wrap up of some important dates. The annual emission inventory report stubs, as we like to call it, those placeholder reports in SLEIS are created by January 1st. We've already done that, and they are due. You need to submit those by April 1st. If you have an approved 30-day extension, that would get you out to May 1st. And if you need an extension, you can either send in a letter or you can email the aei@deq.ok.gov and state what company you're with and why you need the extension. And that will get routed up to the Air Quality Division Director for approval or not approval. And we're pretty quick at getting those turned around. So we'll notify you in 1 or 2 business days after receipt of that with an answer. And then invoices are mailed out July 1st. They're due July 31st. And as I mentioned, facility transfers are due 30 days from transfer. So I'll just quickly touch on some other air programs that are not emissions inventory. However, we do get phone calls and there's a bit of confusion on due dates and who's doing what. So Tier 2 reporting, which is the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, is about potential chemical emergencies. And that is done through our Land Protection Division. That's not Air Quality Division. Those are due on March 1st. So it's kind of close to our deadline. They have a March 1st deadline. We have an April 1st deadline. If you have any questions on that, you can go to their website, or their phone number is 405-702-5100. Another related program is the Toxics Release Inventory Program, and that is done through EPA directly. DEQ does not collect that information. So you can go to EPA's website to report that. I will say we do some comparison. We do a little quality control comparing what you've reported to TRI, what air emissions specifically you've reported there versus what you've reported to us in your inventory. So we may reach out to you sometimes if there's a large discrepancy. And then there's greenhouse gas reporting. DEQ, again, is not involved in the implementation or reporting of this. You can go to EPA's website. They have an applicability tool and a reporting tool. So getting on to the new SLEIS features, which is probably why you're watching this video. What new things have we implemented in our state and local emissions inventory system? I will let you know. So this is our second reporting season with SLEIS. If you've been around a while, we used to have Redbud, which was an in-house built system, and then we launched SLEIS, which over a dozen other state and local agencies in the country used. And our first season went off pretty great, but we saw some areas for improvement, especially from our customers that wrote in asking about some changes. So I will go over these 4 changes, and then I'll get into some other reporting updates. The first one is the source classification code. That's the code at the process, describing what process you have. We added the SCC as an information field to the template file, processes.csv, and I'll go over these in a little more detail on the subsequent slides. Number 2, we now, for your inventory report, at the end it had, or at the beginning, somewhere in there, it has the facility emissions totaled. Number 3, amendments can now be initiated by DEQ. And number 4, the upload file names, whether it's single or batch process, can be renamed and uploaded without causing an input error. So SLEIS improvement number 1, this is what I am talking about. In this CSV file, it used to only have the emission unit ID and the process ID. So if you were using the template file instead of the front end of SLEIS for reporting, then it may have been difficult last year to keep straight like which process was which, because people normally aren't tracking by process ID, but they may know the source classification code and know, okay, okay, this code is for tanks and working and breathing losses and that type of thing. So it might be easier to keep track of which record you're working on and what you need to put in the template file with the SCC. So that has been added. It's only an informational field, so you cannot update it there. The second improvement is that now you have a page in your copy of record, also known as your emissions inventory report, that sums up your emissions for the facility. And if you were familiar with our previous system, Redbud, we did have something like that in those old reports. So this is getting back to that level of service. It's very nice. It's a good tool. Once you've reported your inventory, you can print out your copy of record to keep at the facility, and you can even use it as a quality control check to make sure you didn't put 2,000 tons of benzene, you put 2 tons. So I would encourage you to briefly look that over after you report it. Make sure you didn't have any large mistake. But that's a little hard to do now in SLEIS since it auto-calculates. SLEIS improvement number 3. So last year, companies always had the ability to request to amend an inventory. So there's no change there, and you can do that by going into one of your annual reports that you've already submitted, and on the right-hand side under View Submission History, there should also be a link that says Request Amendment. So the improvement this year is that now we, DEQ, can initiate an amendment for a facility. So that's a little more seamless when we're contacting you. We don't have to say, hey, we've found this error in your report, go ask us for to do an amendment and then we'll grant it. We can just say, notify you, hey, we found this error and we've opened up that report for you to make the correction. So we will always be contacting you. If we do open up one of your reports, we'll call you or email you or do both and let you know it's there for you to correct. And we aren't just going to open it up if we're unsure if it needs correcting. We will make sure first. The last SLEIS improvement I want to talk about is the template file names, and this is what I'm talking about. If you use the templates and not the front end only of SLEIS, then last year you would have known that you had to keep the names as they were when you downloaded them. Well, now that is not the case. You could change, for example, the processes.csv file. If you want to put, okay, this is my 2020 processes, and at this facility, to keep your record straight, you can do that. What SLEIS is going to do is it's going to look inside that file to identify what headers are in there, and it will understand which file it is that way. So some other reporting updates I want to go over. One is tanks. EPA's tanks 4.09D, that's their tanks software that's free on their website, is no longer approved for calculating tank emissions. EPA has decided they're not going to update it, even though they updated some of the inputs in the AP42 document. So to be in line with our permitting section, which they put out a notice that effective April 9th, 2020, they request that applicants discontinue use of the tank software for permit application submissions, and they need to be utilizing the new AP42 method, which corrects errors for more accurate emission estimates. We are going in line with that. Emission inventories, starting with 2020 inventories, need to be using the updated calculation method. You can no longer use EPA's tanks software. And some people last year already decided to go with the new calculation methods, but we weren't geared up quickly enough to get that information out before the reporting season. So we're requiring it starting with the 2020 inventories, and our permitting group has developed a new storage tank emissions calculation tool. It's pretty cool. Here's the website where you can access that. It currently is only for fixed roof and horizontal tanks. You can download the tool and use it for offline use. They do plan on adding floating roof tanks, landing, and cleaning calculations. And if you want to be notified once they do that, you can sign up for Air Permits mailing list at this website. There's other email notifications you can sign up for at that website as well, like being notified of our Air Council meetings. So 2019 reports were the last time you could use EPA tank software as the calculation method. You'll notice when you log in this year with your 2020 report, that method will not be on the drop-down list. And so instead, you will need to utilize 8_0, which is AB42, with no emission factor, and make sure you're calculating using the new methods in AP42. Another update I want to talk about is Coke battery was added as an emission unit type. We accidentally omitted that when we went to opening SLEIS up for reporting. So if you download the SLEIS code tables spreadsheet, the Excel workbook, you'll notice that Coke battery is now in there in the list with emission unit types. And if you're in SLEIS and start typing out Coke battery, it will show up as a type there. Well, this isn't so much of an update as just a reminder that particulate matter metal emissions should be speciated. So you need to report it as the metal emission, but also be including those emissions in the appropriate PM amount, whether it's PM10 primary or PM2.5 primary. And your permit normally has permit factors for PM10 and PM2.5 that include the metal emissions. So the update here is that we will be checking that this is being done. This is a heads up on one of the QCs we'll be doing this summer. We do have quite a few updates on our pollutants. Most of them are minor, and we made changes to align with our rules and federal regulations. And here's some examples. Overall, I'll say we had 80-something changes to pollutants, or 80-something pollutant names that we changed. So that was a lot, but most of them are very minor. Like here's an example. The name used to be total VOC, and now it's volatile organic compounds, VOCs. Another one, we had SOx, and now it's SOx expressed as SO2. And PM, we were really focusing on the size of PM, but now we're just clarifying that it's PM primary, which includes filterable and condensable. So these are just some examples I've parsed out, but there are more changes than this. And I will go into the ones that were bigger changes, not just a slight name change. So one of those is the HAP DDE. And actually this came about because one of our reporters reached out to us last year and said, hey, what's the difference between this DDE and that DDE? And we reached out to EPA and worked with them to get it corrected, because the CAS number, which is also serves as the pollutant code, was incorrect, and EPA had it incorrect. So EPA corrected the HAP list. Their HAP website has been corrected, and their data set, their database, and our database has been corrected. So the correct CAS number is in here. Another change that is important is we have gotten rid of the dioxin furans non-HAP pollutant. We retired that because looking at our regulated air pollutants list in our rules, it references NSPS that specifically calls out to tetra through octachlorinated dibenzo P dioxins and dibenzofurans. And so those emissions are covered by these pollutants. So there's several HAPs in here, and there's VOCs and PM. So you need to report these emissions under these correct pollutants. Make sure that you're speciating and including it if it is a VOC, or if it is a PM, including it there as well. And similarly, we have retired the fluorides non-HAP pollutant because it's covered under these other ones, the hydrogen fluoride, trifluoralin. We did add fluorine expressed as fluoride so that it is fully covered under all of these pollutants. And again, make sure you're reporting it in any category that it falls into, or accounting for those emissions in all categories that it falls into. We did add a pollutant. We added total reduced sulfur expressed as sulfur because that is on our regulated air pollutants list in our rules. So if you have pollutants already in your tracking software, or if you have an in-house spreadsheet where you're calculating emission amounts, I would suggest that you go to the SLEIS homepage and download the SLEIS code tables spreadsheet and get all your codes, especially the descriptions, updated in your system using the pollutant tab in there. This is the end of this presentation. Thank you for viewing it. If you have any questions, again, you can reach out to us. We will keep the form on the training page open for a time period. And as we're getting in questions or comments, but that will eventually be closed. You can always reach out to us at our phone number or our emails. And please check out our other training recordings. Thank you.